Hello, everyone, friends. At your request, we are continuing our series of episodes in the segment about traitors and corrupt officials who are mysteriously getting rich during the war. Last time I told you about an SBU general from Odessa whose wife was found to have a Russian passport and family assets worth millions of dollars. Then there was the story of Kostyantin Samanyuk, the head of the security service of Ukraine in Poltava region. And today, we'll talk about how you can officially not have millions, but at the same time own apartments, penthouses, and luxury cars worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and be in charge of one of the strategically important regions in our country. This episode is about the family of Colonel Oleksii Prokopenko of the Security Service of Ukraine, whose relatives have acquired property worth about $600,000. But let's take it from the top. First, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, friends, and don't forget to like and leave your comments. This is super important for the growth of our community. And let's not waste any time. Let's get started right away. Look, here's the thing. The thing is, every civil servant submits a declaration every year. This is an anti-corruption tool. But the declarations of SBU employees are special. They are classified. Officially, it's for security reasons, but in practice, this secrecy often allows the real situation to be hidden. And of course, the source of income. And the family of one of the high-ranking SBU officials is a vivid example of this problem. I don't know about you, friends, but for me, corruption, especially during wartime, should be equated with treason. And corrupt officials are traitors who, through their actions, are literally handing over Ukraine or specific regions to the enemy. The ones they control, excuse my language. If you agree, by the way, write about it in the comments. If you don't, write that too. Well, for example, Mr. Oleksii Prokopenko, an experienced employee of the Security Service of Ukraine. He has been in service since 2006. He spent most of his career working in the main departments. In the K Directorate, which deals with fighting corruption, well, at least that's what it was called. How it really was, I don't know. And in economic counterintelligence. As is known, these structures were disbanded in 2021 due to inefficiency and a series of scandals. And there really were quite a few scandals there. A lot, actually. Well, in May 2024, Prokopenko was appointed head of the SBU office in the Khmelnytsky region. He is now in charge of regional security. He is responsible for security, I emphasize. And here's what's interesting, friends. Although, his declarations are hidden, the colonel himself leads quite a public life. There he is. A photo with Metropolitan Epiphanius and the head of the Khmelnytsky Regional State Administration. Then at the celebration of Donban's anniversary, he even sits on a working group that ensures government transparency. In that case, a logical question arises. How transparent are the assets of his own family? So, journalists from Hromadske conducted a super impressive investigation, and this very investigative trail, so to speak, led them to his closest relatives. And the first person is the colonel's mother-in-law, 58-year-old Svetlana Boris. And the thing is, in February 2025, she bought a penthouse. Not just an apartment, but a 2-level suite with an area of 180 square meters in the Shevchenkivsky business class residential complex in Kyiv. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a private terrace with a view of the capital. At market value, such real estate would cost about $360,000, but Ms. Svetlana bought it for 3 times less. For only 4.5 million hryvnias. That's about $100,000. She didn't buy the apartment itself, but the property rights to it. Formally, this is the right to demand the transfer of ownership. Usually, this is done when the building is still under construction, but the Shevchenkivsky building has long since been put into operation. So what's the point of such a scheme? And there are real estate experts who explain that this allows you either to pay less in taxes or to hide the real value of the deal. This is a way to legalize the purchase of luxury real estate for which there isn't enough official income. And that's not all, because that same month, Mrs. Svetlana was lucky enough to buy a parking space in the same residential complex for another $40,000. Altogether, that's almost $400,000. And that's just in one building. But friends, you know what's more interesting? Where do Mrs. Svetlana and her husband Anatoly live? They don't live in Kyiv or in a penthouse. They live in this old building in Nizhyn in the Chernihiv region. This was confirmed to Hromadske journalists by the neighbors. By the way, the photo is also from there. How does a resident of Nizhyn have that kind of money? That's an interesting question. She is a sole proprietor, claims to sell clothing, but so to speak, there is no trace of this business online. Previously, she had a sole proprietorship trading food products, but there is zero information about that as well. She is also a co-owner of the company AgroSoyuz Group with an authorized capital of 1,008 hryvnias. No tax reporting whatsoever. Her husband is a pensioner, a former employee of the state emergency service with an average salary of 6,000 hryvnias per month. The question is, how could the family of a pensioner and a small entrepreneur from Nizhyn afford investments in the country and penthouses? Friends, this story is actually not just about Kyiv. It's about an astonishing geographical coincidence. In 2019, Mr. Oleksii Prokopenko becomes the deputy head of the SBU in Odessa. Then, in 2021, he moves to a managerial position in the Crimean administration. In 2022, he, or rather his family, buys 2 apartments in Odessa in prestigious residential complexes, Avignon and Olympijski. Again, using the scheme with property rights, she later sold one of them and instead bought an apartment in Khmelnytsky, precisely in the city where the SBU Colonel is currently serving. A coincidence? Well, maybe, but the pattern is quite interesting, you have to admit. The Colonel's parents also own real estate in Kyiv, an apartment in the British Quarter, and a non-residential space in the Barcelona residential complex. Interestingly, Ivan Prokopenko's father registered the apartment in 2015 with an official valuation of $14,000, while its market value was 2.5 times higher. Mrs. Nadia Prokopenko, the mother, bought a Tesla. Apparently, Mrs. Nadia wanted something extravagant. Also, friends, she owns an apartment in Kyiv. It gives the impression of a certain clear pattern. The relative's real estate appears precisely in those places where Colonel Oleksii Prokopenko is stationed for his official duties. Or again, it could just be a coincidence. Journalists reached out to Mr. Prokopenko himself for a comment. He refused to meet but provided a written response. There are 2 key points in it. First, he divorced his wife, and that's true. But it happened in the summer of this year, 2025, that is, after all the major purchases made by his mother-in-law. And second, all the relatives' purchases were made with their own savings and income from business. In its response, the Security Service of Ukraine detailed that the mother-in-law allegedly traded food products from 2002 to 2022 and from 2024, clothing, earning over 2 million hryvnias. But even theoretically, this amount would not be enough for a Kyiv penthouse, let alone the entire collection of real estate. The media also consulted lawyers for analysis. Pavlo Demchuk, senior legal advisor at Transparency International Ukraine, says this is a classic possible scheme of illegal enrichment. Property is registered not in the official's name, but in the names of their relatives, sometimes even former family members. The question is who actually uses this property and who financed it, and this needs to be investigated. Let's sum up the numbers, friends. According to calculations, the total value of the real estate discovered by Hromadske journalists belonging to the Colonel's relatives, Prokopenko, is approaching $600,000 US, and this amount is absolutely disproportionate to all their official incomes. So what do we have? We have a system that is supposed to protect the state, but part of its mechanism simply allows information to be concealed. We have the family of a high-ranking SBU official who owns millions in real estate without having official income to purchase it. We see remarkable coincidences between the official's place of service and the cities where his relatives buy apartments, and we get standard responses. It's their savings, it's their business. We've already divorced, and so on and so forth. How much longer can this go on? Why, excuse me, do we need Putin if we have those who are getting rich during the war? In a completely bizarre way, I'm not accusing anyone, but that's exactly how it looks. Isn't that right? The questions remain, one way or another. Even if they're naive, forgive me, but they exist. Who is actually the ultimate beneficiary of this real estate? How effectively does the Institute of Conflict of Interest work, for example? When will the declarations of SBU employees become a state secret from the citizens they are supposed to protect? And most importantly, will anyone be held accountable for this? If indeed, investigators who might start a case, although a lot of time has already passed and there is still no case, might find something illegal. This is a story, friends, not about one family. This is a test for the system. A test of transparency, openness, and a real fight against corruption in the most closed institutions. Everyone should see the results of this test. And the most annoying thing, I repeat, is that there is a war going on right now. And these people are in charge of specific regions. Regions that suffer every day from Shaheds, missiles, rockets, and so on and the like. Let's check the state of the fortifications. Let's see how well these regions are protected. Let's see what the real security situation is there. Because all we see now is just the wallet of a particular high-ranking official's family from the service that was supposed to protect us. The people of Khmelnytsky in particular. Thank you, friends. Stay tuned to this channel. Subscribe to it, subscribe more actively, and please write what you think about this story. See you next time, and thank you.